All right, we'll get the Assembly Housing and Homeless Committee started. It is now 10 a.m., Wednesday, May 24th, and we are noticed from 10 a.m. to 11:30. And we'll start off with member introductions. Mr. Martinez.
George Martinez.
Scott Myers. Zach Johnson.
Randy Solt. And then on the phone we have thank you. And then staff introductions.
Alexis Johnson, Anchorage Health Department.
Travis Turner, Municipal Clerk's Office.
Great, thank you. And we're just joined by Mrs. Brawley. Initial audience participation, we have, and also Member Cross also joined us on the phone. Initial audience participation, we have one person signed up, Mr. Oliva, which I do not see Mr. Oliva in the room. I'm not sure if he's on the phone. Nope. Okay. We'll move on. Unfinished business. So in our agenda, we have review of housing and homelessness costs, which we'll be skipping today. We next have an item added, MOA abatement policy. I have through the Department of Law, which I don't see here yet, so we'll skip that and circle back. Any other unfinished business that I may be missing? Okay. Might be a fast meeting, sort of. Okay, new business. We'll move on to the presentation. We have a review of housing funding through alcohol tax, amended CARES, amended ARPA 1, and as amended with mayor veto and override ARPA Round 2 funds. So if we can pull up that presentation. Great. Thanks, Travis. Let's go on to slide 2. So just a recap slide of the projects that have been funded by the municipality. You have the dark blue projects, MOA funded projects since 2020, Catholic Social Services, AHLT, Choosing Our Roots in Covenant House. And you can see on the right, the services and the beds or units that have been made available. And then if you look in the light blue, you can see projects that are in progress. And we have Rural Cap, Cook Inlet Housing, AHLT, Shiloh, Golden Lion, House of Transformation, Providence, Alaska. And then on the left, you can see the map of where these projects are located. The intent of today, if you go to the next slide, is for us to walk through the various groups that have been funded and to have them, in general, answer the questions that you see on the screen. These questions are, and they do vary slightly for some of the groups. Can you give us a brief overview of your program? How many units does your program manage? How many individuals does your program serve? Are there barriers you face to maximize the unit utilization of your units? And with that, we'll walk through the CARES Act funding. And so we can go on to the next slide. And first in the barrel is Covenant House. If you'd like to come up. Yeah, just come up here on the right. And we are joined by Member Perez Verdia on the phone. So if you
Hi,
want
Mike.
to introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name's Allison Kerr. I'm the executive director of Covenant House, and I promise it's allergies. Just want to let everybody know. Everybody's avoiding me, but anyway. So the two projects that were funded through this was really a decision. Was a decision to separate the minors and be able to, at our youth engagement center, go up to the age of 22. Always before, Covenant House has been serving from 13 to 20. And we realized that there was a tremendous gap in services and access to young people with our permanency navigators up to the age of 24. So the two investments that were made, one was, we call it MAC House. And MAC House is 8-bed, but licensed for 10. Licensed for 8, but has a 2-bed overflow. And that is for minors 13 to age 18. Since this has happened, we've had 202 enrollments. The question, I think I remember the questions, are there any barriers to utilization? No, that program pretty much remains close to capacity, so we're really watching it. We do have another location should we need to expand minor services, just because primarily Covenant House is the only one doing minor services 13 to 18. So there's no issues with that program. It's being fully utilized, and we have a strong partnership with OCS and DJJ, really to make sure that young people are in the right situation, not necessarily shelter. So we do a lot of work with them on getting them into the right place. The next investment really was the lofts as well, which was one of the first micro units that were done in partnership with Cook Inlet Housing Authority. And there's 22 beds that are at the lofts. And there was some delay in starting the project, and mainly it was a workforce issue. And just really trying to, while all of our other services had expanded, being able to open that program was a lift. But it opened the 1st of February, and it was full the 17th of February. So are there any issues with utilization? No, other than the fact that it's full. And we do 1-year leases with young people. We've only had 1 turnover in the unit, and the person actually exited the space and went into their own apartment with a permanency navigator. So we had no issue with that. So those are primarily. The one other number that I wanted to give you was with us changing our age utilization to being able to go up to age 24, the YEC, the Youth Residential, through our Community Service Center, served 885 unique individuals. So we knew, and that's over a period of 1.5 years, but we knew that there was a need, and we knew that we could take some of the burden off of some of the adult mass shelters by doing this. So thank you for your investment in emergency cold weather. It was full every night. Thank you for your investment of day services. It remains full every day. And the capacity is running about 55. So between both kind of programs, we have about 125 young people a day on the footprint of the Youth Engagement Center.
That's great. Thank you. And so members each agency may not be coming back. So if members have questions.
I actually just had a small thing. I hear some rustling on the
Real
phone.
quick, I just want to note that Mr. Volan joined us at 10:06. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And this is Anna. Just if folks on the phone could mute, there's a lot of rustling. Thanks.
Mr. Martinez.
Thank you for your work, and I know the need. I just wanted to go back and ask a question about when you talked about workforce issues. How many staff what do you have, and so we could get a sense of staffing issues as we talk about other things as well.
Yeah, so we have 174 staff. I mean, I have these stats because I have to look at it every day. We have 40 vacancies on 170 staff.
Thank you.
And actually, most of them are entry level. So that is the biggest challenge with outreach, some of the programs that are the staff that we train. So, that's our biggest area.
Ms. Brawley.
Yeah, thank you. And also appreciate your work. So I understand you serve basically folks up to age 24. And then it sounds like a lot of folks are coming from OCS. Can you describe kind of the rough proportion that you've seen who have been involved in the OCS system at some point? Yeah.
So, the stats still remain that a close to 40% of the young people that exit foster care within 1 year end up in shelter services. So we've really been trying to go upstream. So we also feel like our Covey Academy is an upstream. It's just a matter of getting that relationship. There's a lot of red tape with when an agency can be involved with someone with a report of harm. We've been trying to figure out, there's some states that have been much more progressive and been able to do it. I'm optimistic that with some of these additional options that we've brought onto, for young people, that we'll be able to change that relationship. Young people aren't placed with us. So that can rest assured, like we're huge advocates to make sure that a young person isn't spend a lot of time in shelter services. So that's really, I would say that's our smallest, length of stay. It averages about 17, but you can see there's quite the turnover if there've been 200 in less than a year. So.
And sorry, one other question about your population. What do you have a rough percentage or proportion of folks who are LGBTQ or gender nonconforming, gender queer, like that population? Because I know, unfortunately, kids get thrown out of the house or they don't feel welcome at home. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say, when we look at foster care, that's about 40%. I would say the second highest is LGBTQ+. And, as an agency, we've really evolved to make sure that we're a safe place for all young people. And we do, we were the one, we did the partnership with CORE, for the HUD demonstration project to really bring those services together. And so we have strong relationships with our LGBTQ+ population.
Okay, thank you very much. And I know we have another slide later on. We'll call you back up.
Okay, thanks.
So go ahead, next slide, Travis. Okay, next up is United Way. And United Way, I know you're here several times, so we'll probably just have you stay up front. So go ahead and introduce yourself. And if you need me to remind you of the questions, let me know.
Okay. Hi, I'm Sam Longacre. I'm the housing director at United Way. Excuse me. So for the CARES Act funding, United Way partnered with Lutheran Social Services to distribute rental assistance and mortgage payment assistance. And that $22.9 million that was distributed went to 21,502 housing payments, which served 6,669 households. So I was not at United Way for this one, but I definitely remember referring people to Lutheran Social Services during this time at a different job. So it was really important for the community, and it was a great way to distribute that money. Do you have any questions about that one? We can talk more about the other two programs.
President, yeah.
Just one more time with the numbers so I can
Sure,
process.
yeah,
I think I
absolutely.
came in just as you were saying them. So you can do it one more time for me.
Yep.
Thanks.
So the total rental assistance and mortgage payment assistance distributed was 22.9 million, which is on the slide. That translates into 21,502 payments, which served 6,669 households. And that translated into 18,694 individual people in those households.
Great. Just want to let you know that member Cross joined us at 10:12. Mr. Martinez? Oh, you're in. Yeah, Cameron joined us at the same time, but he was on the phone, so. Okay, thank you. If you could just stay there, I
Yep.
appreciate it. So next slide, Travis. So going on to the alcohol tax funding. And so Anchorage Affordable Housing and Land Trust. Is anyone here? Yep. Just come up, introduce yourself. And if you need me to remind you of the questions, let me know.
Good morning, Jason Bockenstead. I'm the executive director of the Anchorage Affordable Housing and Land Trust. This grant we actually haven't received yet, so I can just broadly say what we are planning on using it for. 250,000 is coming from the alcohol tax. There's another 250 that's coming from the general operating budget for a total of 500,000. But one of the conversations that we had when we were requesting this of the assembly is that while housing and providing units to individuals is extremely important, just leaving it at that doesn't necessarily solve the problem. A lot of the individuals that we are housing at the guest house and the lakeshore need some extra support, some case management, but just some basic, housing or tenant support to ensure that they actually stay in housing. So the vast majority of this funding we are going to use towards making sure that at these locations there is that necessary housing and tenant support. So, and I know that I'll be back up here with the actual properties later.
Mr. Martinez?
Well, they're both at the table, so I have a question going backwards to the United Way. When you mentioned 6,000, or more than 6,000, but approximately 6,000 households and approximately 18,000 people helped by rental assistance, do you have any, are there additional supports, this kind of off that, what we just heard from Mr. Bakkerstadt? What other things go to helping those people? And do you have any data on the success rate of their staying in their homes?
I do not. That was 2020 and 2021 funding. And it'd be hard to track because there's not really a database if that person hasn't entered homelessness. So if someone enters shelter and that shelter uses that HMIS system for tracking, then you can track how long someone stays in homelessness and when they exit. So we may be able to do, it's possible we could do some data overlap there, but I don't think it would cover all of the people that received it.
Thank you. And to the point about in addition to rental assistance, are there additional supports, literacy, financial literacy, other just supports to help people navigate that?
I'm less familiar with how that rental assistance went out, but I think that one was just focused during COVID on just eviction prevention. So I'm not sure about what else could have been tied to it, but that referral process went through 211. And so United Way's referral program there with 211 can refer to other agencies for case management or financial literacy help or access to food. So I think through that 211 referral system, they would have been able to touch other areas of need.
First, Member Cross.
Thank you. I guess my question's for Jason. So you're looking for a grant, you're looking for additional money, the 250 to go towards employee support at the Lakeshore and other facilities. Is that what I heard correctly?
Yeah, through the chair, some of the Member Cross. Generally speaking, yes. Essentially, the challenge that I think we are currently facing, and I think we'll continue to face in the futures, is how do you make the kind of affordable rental income that we bring in at these properties match the amount of expense that we have both in managing the property, keeping it up, doing those types of things, but then also being able to pay for the necessary kind of on-site tenant support to keep people housed.
Yes. So my follow-up is United Way, which is subsidizing rent for private property owners. Those property owners through that rent have to carry that full burden. They still have to provide a majority of the services you're doing, even though it's not owned by a land trust or, So I'm curious on what those numbers look like in comparison, because we're subsidizing rents on private property owners and they're left with 100% of the burden of carrying that, but it's an aggregate of the subsidized rent. What do we need to do in order to make sure the numbers for land trusters are equal, or that the income justifies the expenses against the property? Does that make sense? Because then how is it that the private sector is able to make it work, but land trust can't?
Through the chair, some of the Member Cross, I think we might be conflating a couple of different things within there. My understanding of how the rental assistance program worked is it was for individuals. So, people that were already in their home or already, so it was a family or an individual that just, they weren't able to, they lost a job, they had their income reduced or whatever happened during the pandemic. But it was also, take me, for example, if I had $1,000 a month rental, but I was in my house during the pandemic, I could have gone to United Way and said, hey, I need help with rental assistance for a period of time. That's essentially, I think, what they were helping with. What we're doing and providing is, at a reduced kind of rental rate, more affordable housing units. So that is the difference. I don't think that we were subsidizing the private sector. I think what we are experiencing is that extra that tenant support that the people that were getting rental assistance from United Way, I don't think actually needed, and that's the difference.
Okay, I want to make sure I didn't hear you say that the people that were receiving the support didn't need it. I think what you're saying is it's just a
didn't need the on-site tenant support. They definitely needed rental assistance support, but that is the difference.
All right. Yeah, I'm interested to see those numbers for the hotel and what that looks like as far as what comes in, because I can't remember how many units there were. But then what the income is on those rents with it is a reduced rent, but I also know that we got a really good deal on that building. So I'd be interested in seeing those numbers. Thank you.
Member Brawley?
Yeah, thank you. I do have a question, but not to go too far on a tangent, but I think, so there's affordable housing, which can be, often run by nonprofits, often has some kind of rental assistance subsidy through HUD, whether it's to the building or to the people in the units. And it is a really thin margin. It's hard to make that work. And often, that is why it's done in the private sector, nonprofits with government subsidy. I think there is also what they call naturally affordable or naturally occurring affordable housing, NOAA. And essentially that's low rent properties. And so that's more in the private sector. And there's a huge range in terms of quality and all of those things. And so I think it's important to keep that in mind. And I think where the private sector, if it is penciling for those owners, I think what happens, and not speaking for everybody, but what gets shortchanged is the long-term maintenance of those properties, right? And that's true for a lot of people in their homes too, right? You can afford to live in your house. It's going to keep going downhill a little bit if you're not keeping it up. But then there's no way to actually have a reserve, basically. And I know a lot of condo associations deal with that too, not having enough in reserve. So I think it is important to understand, that even in the private sector, it's not that all of those long-term maintenance needs are being fully met by the rents. It's just the way that it is, and in our housing stock ages. But my question actually for Jason is for the folks who are living in your properties right now, what kind of rough percent of them are working? Like, because I know everybody has some form of income. Some folks have disability income, Social Security, but how many would you say have some form of a job?
Yeah, great question. Through the chair, Assemblymember Brawley, I would say that currently at the Lakeshore, most of them have a job, and I think that was kind of that property kind of lends itself to individuals that probably have a job and need less kind of support. I will say that currently at the guest house, the number that are currently employed are probably around 30% out of about 125.
And for those who aren't, can you describe, is it disabilities or is it need for other services or what?
Yeah, so specifically at the guest house, there are about 30 individuals that are in the permanent supportive housing program that is, again, funded by the municipality through the alcohol tax and run by United Way. And then the rest of the current residents, 95, are in some form of, they have a job, or they are currently looking. So it's about 95 that, are kind of what I would consider they're just needed a more affordable place to live.
Thanks. So that was 3 of 22. Thanks, appreciate that. And last of the alcohol tax, back to United Way for the Home for Good program.
Hi. So the Home for Good program is a project that houses Anchorage's most visible and vulnerable homeless residents by connecting them with housing and supportive services. So this is a pay for success project. So that $1.8 million on the slide gets allocated every year, but we have to earn the payments by showing through an evaluation that people were stably housed. So in this project, we partner with case management teams, and they provide intensive case management for folks and help them stay in blocks of rooms through the guest house or some rural cap properties or scattered site. So we kind of have a combination there of both of them. There are currently 60 individuals in housing through Home for Good and 11 that are working with their case management teams to find housing. And the people that are eligible for the program come from an eligibility list that takes municipal emergency services and homelessness data and finds high utilizers of APD, EMS through the fire department and the safety center. And so that's how we get our eligibility list. And then we make those referrals to those case management teams. Our biggest barrier to enrolling more individuals and earning those outcome payments is access to housing vouchers. So getting a housing voucher for folks is taking a lot longer than was originally in the project design. So our project ends up paying for rent a lot longer than we anticipated. So if we could get access to more housing vouchers more quickly, we could enroll more individuals because we're paying their rent until they can connect with that housing voucher. And then for substantial changes, our project timeline has been extended from a 3-year project to a 5-year project. The amount we can earn from those outcome payments, the total is exactly the same. We just needed more time to enroll more people and earn those payments. And that's it. If you guys have any questions. Trying to help you get through all the slides.
Okay, no questions. Appreciate it.
I think the next one.
So next we move on to ARPA round 1 and House of Transformation, Housing and Wraparound Services. Do we have anyone here? Okay, next slide. So Shiloh Community Housing, Young Adult Workforce Development. So please introduce yourself, and if you need a reminder of the questions, let me know.
My name is Shanae Williams. Is it on? Shanae Williams, Shiloh Community Housing President, CEO. We received funding round one for our workforce development program, Life at Work. It is for participants, you see a couple of them there, ages 16 to 24. It supplements our program that we have called Life, which is Living Independent Forever, which is a transitional housing program that we've been operating for over 20 years in Mountain View. This program, Shiloh, is about homeless prevention. So this program is to educate that population within and remove barriers to working, barriers to employment. This particular program is open to the community, even though it was set up specifically for our participants that are housed in our transitional housing program. The barrier, brief overview, I just gave it to you, how many people are served. This $300,000 allowed us to have program activities for about 18 months. Within those 18 months, we served a unique count of about 30 young adults. Our program was virtual, which allowed several people to attend that were working. We were able to provide education to them, to keep them working. Our whole premise is to prevent homelessness. what are the barriers? The barriers to completing that program right now is financial support. The program right now is dormant. The program started at the beginning for the first time in 2020, and these funds allowed us to continue this program through April of this year. So right now, this program has ended. I think that was the last question.
Thank you. Mr. Perez-Verdia?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand. So the funding that you were provided allowed you to go for a period of time, and now it's dormant. And what are the prospects for identifying additional funding? Do you see opportunities for identifying additional funding, and do you feel like that there is a significant need?
I have requested additional funding. So as a grant writer, I have written grants and are waiting for those responses.
Okay.
I definitely see a need for the program. Young adults ages 16 to 24 are not getting the skills they need to remove barriers to employment from school. And once you're out of school, there is no way that you're getting them. And what makes this program unique is that most of our training is virtual, and the training sessions begin after the workday.
Okay.
The programs that are available now are from 8 to 5 while people are at work. And by having the virtual session, it allowed those participants to receive training from wherever they lived in their homes. So that in itself made it easier and accessible for those that might have kids. The program also provided supportive services for interviewings, work clothes, babysitting services. Someone needed something to get a job for an interview. But it taught practical education around getting a job and keeping a job, what not to do on social media. So we've learned a lot from our LIFE program in working with those participants every day. Some of the downfalls that they were running into in keeping jobs. Even if they got a good job, they would do something and they just didn't know. They hadn't received that experience or education. So it's definitely needed.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. So next up is choosing our routes. Okay. United Way, Landlord Housing Partnership.
Hi. So the Landlord Housing Partnership is a program that is working to increase the number of units that are available to people exiting homelessness. So this is a partnership with landlords that came out of a lot of lessons we learned from Home for Good, where we're providing a lot of supportive services to individuals, but we also need more landlord support in how to work with case managers and overcoming some of the barriers that landlords face in renting to someone that's exiting homelessness. So this program provides financial incentives to kind of mitigate some of those risks that a landlord sees if someone has poor rental history or a recent eviction. So this one provides incentives at lease up and a 3-month retention incentive, but then also comes with a risk mitigation fund. So the money appropriated at this round is still there for reimbursing damages. So if it's over the security deposit, a landlord can apply if they worked with the program to have us reimburse damages that the tenant caused. So we're trying to make it easier for landlords to rent to people exiting homelessness. Right now, the Landlord Housing Partnership has 109 landlords engaged in the program. And from February 2022 to now, we've served 124 households through, it could be through a few different avenues, through those incentive payments, through that risk mitigation funding. And then we've recently partnered with the Alaska court system to add a prevention aspect where the eviction diversion program can refer folks to us who only need like a one-time payment on rent arrears or a 1-month payment. And then if they can sustain rent going forward, we can provide that one-time assistance to prevent that eviction.
Thank you. Member Cross?
Yeah, that's a good program. The question I had was doing the cost mitigation. Is cost mitigation only for material damages to the property?
Yes, so it's a reimbursement,
Reimbursement.
based.
But if I were to place an individual who exhibited some behavioral issues that cost me one or two other tenants in my building during the time that I was trying to deal with that issue, is there any cost mitigation? Is there any for that? Because often the costs are not just material. One bad tenant will drive off two or three good ones, and then what happens is the property degrades, right? It just degrades because now attracting good people becomes more complicated. So the cost mitigation take any of those factors into consideration?
I don't think we'd be able to apply it for lost rent on different units because it is tied to that unit that the tenant is in. But if there is lost rent while those damages are being repaired, landlords can apply for that as well.
Member Brawley?
Yeah, this isn't a question. I just want to say I really appreciate that this program exists. I think it's, having worked on this for several years before this, I know this has always been a gap. To say we have mostly private landlords, and so there are units out there, and just it's really difficult. And from the landlord's perspective, it's difficult because of the things Member Cross brought up, the costs and the risk essentially. And so I appreciate that this is a risk mitigation program, and that it really helps match people who need housing with people who have housing, and addressing those practical issues. Thank you.
Thank you. And Member Cross?
Yeah, and I'm familiar with several landlords and some individuals that use those programs or similar programs. And so it's important to understand what happens in the private sector when these programs come into play. Typically speaking, an individual owns a property for a prolonged period of time, and they have a tenant who lives in that unit for like 15 years. I had a property in Midtown. I had 3 tenants in a 16-plex that lived there for 27 plus years. 27 years. You don't typically raise the rents on them. They're normally paying like $700 for a 2-bedroom because at that point you're like, they don't rent. But when they move out, you're left with a unit that hasn't been updated in 27 years. So you put the minimal that you can into it because it's really expensive, because you haven't been making a ton of money because you've been subsidizing basically the rent by not raising that long-term tenant. So then you use programs like this. And my only concern with these programs is they fix up the units. They're definitely health and life safety, all that's issue, but they don't have garbage disposals. They don't have dishwashers. Usually there's a lot of the smaller refrigerators, little amenities that they say, okay, well, that makes sense. And then after they utilize that program for a period of time because they pay above market rent, whatever it is, they bank that money. And then that program, they'll quit using it in about 2 years and use that cost overrun to then repair the unit, increase the value of the property, and then get a market rate tenant. Does that make sense? So it's important to realize that all these programs work. More than likely, a property owner isn't going to use it more than a couple of years. And so you have to keep finding new landlords. And I think that's a really important thing to realize, is that you're going to have to keep finding new people, because they're going to phase in and phase out and phase in and phase out until they get their building up and operating. Because most private sector, they're still going to prefer market rents with a market tenant. And so I think that's just something to keep in mind. Thank you.
Just want to add that we're joined by Member Constant at 10:37.
I missed one of the questions. For the barriers that we face in this program, it's usually that we are having a hard time finding 1-bedroom affordable units. So there are some 2- and 3-bedroom units that are available through landlords in this project right now, but they tend to be more expensive and harder for families that maybe only have one person that is earning income. So our struggle is usually around the 1-bedroom units. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So moving on to ARPA round 2 and United Way again.
Sorry, same project, landlord housing partnership. So the first round included risk mitigation funding, and then the second round is focused more on the eviction diversion program through the Alaska court system.
Thanks. Now you're free.
Thank you.
Okay, back to Shiloh Community Housing, Resource Center and Child Connect Project. Sure.
Shanae Williams, Shiloh Community Housing. Keep going off. Shanae Williams, Shiloh Community Housing, President, CEO. These funds were received for our resource center development, which include a Child Connect function, I should say. Like I mentioned before, we're about housing development, housing prevention. This resource center is being developed in a building that was donated by GCI. It's over 14,000 square feet. The intent is to disrupt homelessness. Homelessness prevention. We're going to operate services such as a furniture bank, where we will collect gently used furniture and give it away for free. We will have an internet cafe where community residents will be able to use internet for free. GCI not only gave us the building, they gave us free internet for 3 to 5 years. We will have a workforce development center there. Department of Labor has already committed to operating a job center. The Child Connect Center will be there for persons that are using the services to drop their child off. We will also have services around financial literacy, behavioral health, a community kitchen, and office space for lease. This is a one-stop shop model that we're facilitating, where we're hoping that service providers will come to this location and provide the many services that are available today. Right now, their access to those services can be impacted because of transportation, especially during the winter. So if a person can come to one spot, one place, and get the services they need, we're hoping that that is going to help prevent homelessness. We operate a program around financial assistance for eviction prevention and utility shutoff currently. And that's what gave me the vision for this particular facility, or the need. There's a gap for providing education to those persons that are living on the edge. And that's what this resource center is going to do. It's going to provide education around financial literacy. We hear a lot of, I didn't know. We partner with Catholic Social Services and United Way and Alaska Housing Finance for those financial assistance dollars that we're providing, but we can only assist persons one time. We know that these people are ending up in a different, unhoused. They are not on the street, the people that we see, but they are living with other families. They're essentially homeless. So that's the purpose of this particular program, where we received $200,000.
I'm gonna throw myself in the queue real quick. Any overlap or any work with Covenant House and their
Yeah,
youth
we are.
services?
Not specifically for this particular program, but we're open to, we partner with Covenant House on a lot of different program areas with our life program. We partner with everyone in the city. Shiloh Community Housing has been in development or in operations for over 20 years. We partner with everybody.
Member Perez Verdia?
Thank you. Just similar to the last question. So it sounds like GCI gave you the building and has gave you internet. The operational costs of this, I'm curious about where you're getting the funding to make sure that you're able to operate this now and into the future.
We've received grants. We're now right in the middle of a capital campaign to make some upgrades to the facility so that we can open for full operations. I'm working with a group of consultants that have assured us with the office rental space that we have, we will be able to be sustainable in keeping the operations running. I want to add that in our 20 years, we haven't had a lot of government subsidies to keep us going. We have a property, a fourplex that we purchased with monies from HUD with no government subsidies. We paid that property off last year. So we have learned to be efficient in our operations. And what we need right now is a little bit of help to get this facility on board, and it is definitely needed. Someone needs to address the gap.
Great, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Are there two in a row?
That is
Oh,
Caught us off guard. So again, Shiloh Community Housing, fresh beginning
Yes.
and affordable housing development project.
So this is an affordable housing development property. With the $300,000, we purchased a sixplex, which are 2-bedroom units. We partnered with United Way Landlord Housing Partnership Program, and 5 of those units have participants in it that are tenants that came from the cold weather shelter. That's about 24 beds, which we know several of the units have more than the expected number of tenants there because they came from homelessness and they brought their friends out of homelessness to these apartments. The barrier right now for us to keep this going is case management. It's one thing to provide housing for persons that were originally homeless, but we're seeing the evidence of the other services that are needed, and those are case management. We know how to manage property because we've done it before, but some of the things that have been said before, we've experienced that. The barrier I see is financial assistance for those supportive services that are needed, that once persons are housed, the resource center I spoke about earlier will be that resource to help people stay housed and to provide some of that education. But there are case management services, real case management services that will enable a person that has been homeless to understand what it means to have a home. We're providing a house, but what about how to provide a home, cooking the right meals, taking out the garbage, which are some of the things we experienced. After we brought in our first tenant, we had a plumbing issue because things were being put in the toilet that shouldn't have been there. So it's those type of areas that need those persons, some of them need assistance in understanding. So what we've learned is the life skills training that we're providing to our young adults in our transitional housing are the same services that these adults need, life skill training. So case management, the lack of that is a barrier for continuing this program. And of course, the financial assistance that goes along with those case management services.
Thank you. Real quick, and noticed our youth members in the room. If you'd like to come up and take a chair. Member Voland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Shanae, I really appreciated the opportunity to take a tour of one of your multifamily properties during this process. And, we've talked a lot about on this body when we're considering the future of shelter or housing in Anchorage. Is this a place that if I needed to go, I would want to live there? And I certainly felt that way about the property that you showed me and just how well kept it was. And just appreciate the work that Shiloh's doing in the community. A question for you. So when you talk about that type of support for your tenants, do you have like certain providers in the community in mind to sort of liaison with? Or is that something that with adequate future funding, Shiloh wants to take on the work of doing itself? Or how do you imagine that going forward?
Well, I can tell you 100% Shiloh does not want to take that on. We would partner with agencies that are already doing it. Yeah, we don't believe in reinventing the wheel. And that is not. We want to concentrate on preventing homelessness by providing affordable housing and service access to those services. No, we wouldn't do it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Member Cross.
yeah, inevitably the properties need maintenance. Do you oftentimes see the young individual interested, or do you kind of take that as an opportunity to train or at least show them what's being done so they can learn a little bit about basic property maintenance? You said taking out trash and things like that, but I raised 3 boys and every one of them knows how to repair sheetrock by now. So, things like that. Do you take opportunities like that to help them learn and grow?
So there are 3 properties that are managed by Shiloh. So one of the properties is the transitional home that has the young adults. The other properties are tenants, tenant-based. You know, they're not, they're regular tenants that we've made their rental affordable. But to answer your question about the young adults that are in our program, yes, we take every opportunity to give them education in maintaining a house. That's part of their life skills training. Not only making minor repairs, but cutting the grass and knowing when to cut the grass and cleaning the parking lot. So yes, that's our transitional housing program, which is not receiving any funding from either of these opportunities. But yes, we do.
Great, thank you.
So next up, guest house, AHLT.
Jason Bockenstead again, Executive Director of the Anchorage Affordable Housing and Land Trust. I know I have the next two slides, but this is the guest house, the downtown property. We have 127 units that are at this property, as I mentioned earlier. About 30 of them are reserved for the permanent supportive housing, Home for Good program. The rest are, what you would basically say are in some form or another self-pay, so about 95. As of, I think it was Sunday when I last saw the numbers, we currently have 119 individuals living at the guest house. The remaining 8 rooms are either in the process of getting leased to individuals or in varying stages of repair or renovation from previous tenants that have moved out. The other thing that I would mention, just kind of not just this property, but the next two that I will talk to about as well, is that the individuals that we are leasing to here, we have really removed almost every single barrier that I think a lot of these individuals have faced. So we don't check their credit score. We don't ask for first and last month's rent. Our security deposit is $250, and we offer a payment plan if they can only do $25 a month for a period of time to get there. And so I would venture to guess that probably the vast majority of the individuals that are going to be living at not only this property but the other two likely would not qualify to live at any other kind of property that is in the private sector. So we really have removed a lot of those barriers for housing for these individuals. The kind of barriers that I see, going forward to utilize these properties over the long term, a couple, and certainly, some of these I don't think are going to be new or actually anything that the assembly or the local government can do anything about. But I think, one area is just the lack of vouchers available versus the demand. The demand for housing vouchers in this city and state and country far exceed the amount that are available. So that is certainly going to be a challenge, as we kind of continue to move forward. The second that I would say specifically to the guest house is, again, just as we try to kind of house people and bring the services on to stabilize them and make them successful in new housing. One of the challenges that I think we face here, based on some policy decisions that have been made, is the lack of access that some of these individuals have that would certainly qualify for emergency rental assistance that is currently out there. The way that it is currently set up is you have to currently be homeless to qualify. But I will tell you, we have a number of individuals that, sooner rather than later are going to have a very, very hard time, either because they still haven't gotten a voucher, they haven't gotten Social Security disability, whatever it may be, they haven't been able to acquire the necessary funds to continue to pay even the below market rent, here at this location. So trying to figure out ways to, kind of access that and give those individuals, a little bit more runway to either come up with a job, get Social Security disability, get a voucher, those types of things. So I think those are going to be two of the barriers that I see at this property in particular.
Member Brawley?
Yeah, I'm going to ask a question that I know the answer to, but I think it's helpful to say. Who funds housing vouchers in this state, and who administers that program?
So through the chair, Assemblymember Brawley, I mean, the voucher programs are run by AHFC, but ultimately, their ability to, fund the number of vouchers that they get are dependent on how much, Congress and, national leaders fund the Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Sorry, can you just clarify what AHFC is?
It's the Alaska Housing Finance Corporation.
So a state agency.
A state agency, yes.
Thank you.
Member Perez Verdia?
Is that me? Oh, Jason, you could just give me the number again. I think I had the number wrong for the, is it number of units, the number of people that the guest house can house? Can you give me that again?
So the number of units are 127 that we have. We have and are certainly open, and certainly some of the rooms do this. We are certainly open to individuals having roommates. So the number of individuals that can be housed could conceivably exceed that 127. And I know we do have some of the rooms do have roommates.
Member Voland?
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate the work that your organization is doing to keep the guest house up and running. It was one of my first co-sponsored appropriations when I was elected to the body. And, I'll just say, I think much to their credit, the Downtown and Fairview Community Council leaders wrote a letter of support when we were trying to help close that sale. Currently, so 119 currently occupied. Of the current occupants, do you have an idea of how many of those are the permanent supportive housing tenants?
Through the chair, Assemblymember Voland, I believe 29 are on the permanent supportive housing side. There's one room that's available for permanent supportive housing there.
Great. Can I ask a couple follow-ups, Mr. Chair? Thanks. One thing that I heard at a meeting that happened at La Cabana, which is the neighboring Mexican restaurant, when First Presbyterian was going to help facilitate the closure of the sale, was that there was going to be a no on-site consumption policy. And I've repeated that because that's what I heard when I was learning more about this and what was presented to the community councils. Can I just get a concrete answer? Is that the case, that there's a no on-site consumption policy at the guest house?
Through the chair, Assemblymember Vollen, yes, certainly, we run into issues with that, but that is certainly the policy.
Great. And then on the issue of the ERA funding, you talked about a policy choice. And I realize, and you alluded to this, that there are some tenants who effectively now are housing insecure because they may shortly be losing their ability to stay at the guest house. Whose policy choice is that?
Through the chair, Assemblymember Vollen, my understanding is that it's a policy choice, a joint policy choice between the administration and AHFC. My understanding, again, is that the Assembly a couple of meetings ago, tried to clarify what their intent was when they appropriated, those dollars that we received from the federal government, was that it should be used not just for those that are currently homeless. But I haven't seen that change yet.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Member Cross?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember who I was working on with that resolution. So that was something that Alexis had brought to our attention, which is AFC has funds for people that are homeless or people that need housing, but the minute you put a roof over their head, they're no longer considered needing housing. So that money goes up real quick. And then, so I'm trying to remember who it was we were working on redefining or making a request to Alaska Housing that they redefine that as maybe, it was Felix, 90 days, 120 days, 6 months. Like it shouldn't drop off the minute you walk through the threshold of the property, right? Which is then you just have this revolving door. And that's the problem that you're talking about. And so the only way you do that is redefine what is homeless. And homeless can mean not just being homeless, but recently housed to a specific date. And I don't believe we ever got a final answer on how to make sure that we don't have this constant revolving door that you're referring to. Thank you.
Thanks, Member Rivera.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. If we can make sure your mics are off. Okay, perfect. So, this has been a recurrent issue, and unfortunately, we've never gotten true clarity on who owns this issue. When I have tried to get clarity, it's always a back and forth, folks pointing the finger at each other. Regardless, even with that resolution that Mr. Cross and I put forward and the Assembly approved, it was made clear that that resolution would not impact the money that's currently on the street. So the $8 million that we're going to get to soon, I think it's the last part of these slides, is the ERO2 funds. It won't impact those funds. It will only impact the last $4 million, which we haven't received yet, which is unfortunate because we know that, well, we'll get to it when we talk about the ERO2 funds at the end of this presentation and some of the barriers that are being faced with getting those funds used. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, next slide. Okay, hotel conversions again, Barrett Lakeshore Inn.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll start with the Lakeshore because that one is actually a facility that a number of you have already come and toured. It's open. We have, again, as of last week, we're about 50% full. There are 45 rooms and varying, a couple of 1 bedrooms, a 2 bedroom, some efficiencies, and then some SROs as well with small kitchenettes. And we are working as quickly as we can. I think we're doing about 3 to 5 new individuals moving in a week to get them in. So the hope is probably in the next month, by the end of June, hopefully, we'll have this one, pretty much full occupancy as well. And, again, I think as I discussed in the previous slide, the same barriers I think are going to, just kind of continue at all 3 of these. So I won't necessarily repeat those. And then the Barrett, we are, in the middle of doing a lot of renovations and conversions there. In the last 2 weeks, we finally received all of the final permits from the city to do a lot of the structural work that's required. If you've driven by here in the last couple of weeks, you'll probably see that the entire roof has been replaced with new roofing. And again, for this building, they're right now just kind of standard hotel rooms, a couple of 1 bedrooms that will be in there. But for a lot of this property, part of the renovations that we're doing or the conversions is really adding kind of those separate sinks and cabinetry that kind of allow for individuals to do some, limited cooking and things like that in their room. In the restaurant area, the old restaurant area, that is where there'll be actually 3 very large communal kitchen areas once the renovations are complete there, along with the dining room and kind of another large living area over there. This property will have 96 units once it's fully ready to go. And we're still working on kind of when that is going to be. My expectation is that all renovations will be done probably by the middle of August, but we do want to begin moving people in sooner than that. So there will probably be on a rolling basis as a floor is done or as it's safe for individuals to move in, begin that process hopefully within the next month of at least moving some individuals in. And then, like I said, by the middle to end of August, we'll be ready to go and bringing even more individuals there. So,
Member Brawley?
Yeah, just thank you for organizing the tour last month at the Lakeshore Inn. And I happen to live up the street from both these properties, so just want to say welcome to my new neighbors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So next up, Providence, Alaska, construction of permanent supportive housing. Okay. After that, Eagle River's Elks Lodge, rehoming veterans program. Okay. And Cook Inlet Housing Authority, Jabala Corners, Phase 2.
Good morning. Tyler Robinson, Vice President, Community Development and Real Estate with Cook Inlet Housing. I would just real quick, we serve as a development consultant for Providence, and I would just say that project is underway. If you drive by, you'll see it moving forward. So that's permanent supportive housing. I can't remember if it was 50 or 51 units, but that's under construction currently. Our projects in that award is really 3 projects. I think it was Assembly Member Constant who said, when we had a couple of requests in and said, well, how about we sort of treat this almost like a mini block grant? We provide you this award and you all figure out how to shift that money to make the capital stacks work. So embedded in that is three projects. All 3 are on redevelopment sites, which adds to some of the complexity and challenge. The Jabala Corners Phase 2 is 38 units of 2 and 3 bedroom affordable housing adjacent to 48 units that I think many of you have seen that was completed last year. So this phase really brings kind of more medium density with those 2 and 3 bedrooms, is much more likely to serve families with children. Mountain View Brewster's on the corner of Burgaw and Mountain View Drive, the old Brewster's store, is 21 units that of affordable housing. It's across the street from the Mountain View Library, the Red Apple Grocery Store, and Clark Middle School. It is 21 units of 1 bedroom and studio apartments. The project's fully designed. I think we're 90% through permits. We're in the process of finalizing one more piece of our capital stack, but we hope to be under construction here later this summer. And the last one is really our Eagle River Coronado Park. Assemblyman Myers might know this one from having represented some of these units, but really the full extent of it as we conceptualize the development is 12 more units of condominium home ownership units. There's 4 triplex townhouse style construction. We hope to break ground on at least 1 of those triplexes, if not 2 of those triplexes this summer. This really has minimal amount of ARPA funding into it. So this really acts more like typical constraints in the for sale market, just absorption, cost of funds. You can't build them all if you don't have a boatload of money. So you build them, you sell them, and then you build the next one. That's fundamentally what's going on with those units. They're 1 and 2 bedroom units. So we expect they will satisfy kind of that beginner homeowner and or downsizer in Eagle River that wants to still maintain residency. I think the question was barriers. Barriers are always on the construction side or new construction. You all know and have been seeing this. I mean, redevelopment sites, there's always surprises. There's lengthy entitlement processes. There's negotiation of contamination and working through that stuff with the Department of Environmental Conservation. It's kind of a reason why the private sector often doesn't take these development challenges on. It also takes a long time to put that capital stack together. And in particular, the last couple of years, if it's 7 or 8 months from when you think, when you conceptualize and price a project, maybe even bid it out and have a contractor, by the time those 7 months are over, costs have changed dramatically. And so that's really, we've never seen anything like it. We'll have bids. One mechanical sub will bid on a project. That's not generally a good thing for pricing for new construction. And those prices are really volatile. So our development team's doing our best to, we have a good track record of figuring out how to pull this stuff off, but it's, they're challenging. And I think much like everybody, whether it's your organization, your business, your multifamily housing, operating costs are also rising. And those operating costs in the affordable housing world, you can't raise the rent to cover those operating costs. As a function of accepting money from the federal government or the state, you really created a rent cap. And so your ability then to sort of manage inflationary costs is really difficult. And, too bad, so sad. I mean, that's what we're all dealing with. It's just another factor that makes our product a little bit different than say the private market. So with that, I'd take any questions.
Member Brawley?
Not a question, but another comment. I used to live near the properties that you have in Spenard. And in fact, I remember about 10 years ago, we did a walking tour of the area. And it was back when there was, now there's a building, but it used to be a wood lot. There was a lot of dilapidated houses and about 50 cats, I think you said, that you had removed over the years to make room for this new housing. So I'm just reflecting on the fact that so much change has happened and that I really appreciate your organization's work to bring beautiful new housing to that area. Because I think it, like you said, it takes time, it takes a lot of money, it's frustrating, there's a lot of barriers, but you guys get it done. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you. I've been working on that development site since 2012. So as we run out of greenfield sites, we're working on 2 projects in the Valley. They're so much easier to deal with, right? Those are greenfield sites. They've never been built on. There's none of this land assemblage, demolition, potential contamination. So, I think this is a huge deal that Anchorage is facing. And it just gets harder and harder as even the good redevelopment sites sort of dry up. Thanks. Thank you.
Go ahead. Go ahead. You.
How are these houses made available and advertised to families who might need them?
Good question. Through the chair, you go to our website, we post our vacancies. So in these new developments, keep in mind, they won't be completed until maybe August, September, October. I don't know exact schedule, sort of depends when we get in the ground. And generally about 3 months before they're completed, the vacancies will be posted. You come into our office, if you're a private landlord, you might do a credit check on somebody, have them fill out a brief application and rent a unit to them. Under the low-income housing tax credit program, I'll just say our application is a little bit more involved than that, unfortunately. But you come into our office, or if you know somebody, you can refer them to our office at Cook Inlet Housing, starting with our website. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So next up is Rural CAP, Affordable Housing Deferred Maintenance Programs. Great, welcome.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jessica Parks. I'm the Housing Operations and Development Director at Rural CAP, and I wanted to talk a little bit about this project. This project is part of a larger deferred maintenance project that we have across our entire portfolio. The Rural CAP portfolio is 266 total units. We have 144 units of permanent supportive housing, 47 units of transitional housing for families, and then 75 units that are low-income affordable housing. I did want to highlight, it's not part of this project, but something else that Rural CAP does is through our home improvement project, we work on housing preservation. So we have a mobile home repair program, which is funded by the municipality to help preserve the affordable housing stock that is in the form of mobile homes, and then also our weatherization program, which helps extend the useful life of homes here in Alaska. So in fiscal year 22, we served just under 500 people through our programs. Like I said, 266 units, but in our low-income housing and transitional housing, we serve families, so there will be more than one person per unit there. One of our biggest challenges is also staffing. I feel like that is a recurring theme today, but being able to not just have the operations staff and continuity, but also being able to access staff to perform some of the routine maintenance and unit turns that we do with our housing programs. So if we do not have a full staff of maintenance staff, it takes longer to turn that unit, which means it's vacant longer, which means two things. One, loss of income, but also someone who could be occupying that unit isn't able to because it's not ready.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Next, we're moving on to emergency rental assistance 2. First up, Alaska Housing Finance Corporation. Next up, Partners for Progress. Welcome.
Doreen Schenkenberger, CEO, Partners for Progress. The ERA 2 funds that we received through the Alaska Housing Finance Corporation are funding 2 homeless programs for Partners for Progress, one for the congregate funding and one for the non-congregate funding. The funding that we were awarded funds 225 individuals from homelessness for up to 15 months each, from transitional housing to permanent placement. Of the 181 individuals we've served so far with this funding, 94 are still active in our program and housed. 5 have actually completed the program. So this started in February of 22. So if you go 15 months from there, so 5 have completed the 15-month program. Of those 5, we've followed up, and 4 are still stably housed after the program ended. So they've either got vouchers, they got employed, and were stable enough to continue their housing on their own. Of the 181 individuals, 82 were discharged. And we took a look at reasons for discharge because, of course, we want to keep everybody housed, as many people as we can housed. The majority of them we lost contact with. The second highest rate was evicted. They were evicted by the housers. And another percentage opted out of the program. This money doesn't have any requirements to it, unlike our reentry program at Partners for Progress. Our reentry program is a 6-month, very structured program. We provide housing and supportive services. With this funding, we don't have any requirements other than that the person be homeless. So it's a process to work with the people to, if they're employable, have them go through our employment and training program. If they need treatment or sober support, trying to get them into those programs that are at our center, trying to get them into financial literacy training. Many times when we do that with this population, unfortunately, they decline and they opt out of our program. So the 82 that were discharged, they still have funding left. So that funding is recycled into new spots available for new clients. And so that's how the HFC funding works. Right now, we're trying to put as many people into our E&T program as able if they're employable. Otherwise, we sign them up for public assistance, for Social Security, disability insurance, anything that we can. As far as barriers to the program, they're very similar to what everybody here has been saying. Not enough vouchers for housing, and then if they get vouchers, there's not enough housers to use the vouchers at. Many of the people in this population need assisted living. They just can't live on their own. We've had quite a few failures in that area. Many of the individuals that we're serving have criminal records with sexual offenses, some with arson, some with drug manufacturing. Those people are very, very difficult to house. Other barriers are not enough housing for women with children. We're currently working with a mother and father with 9 kids right now, and we've been working with their living in their car, between a car and a hotel room. And it's been extremely difficult to find housing. We still haven't found housing for them, but we're not going to give up. That's all I have, unless you have questions.
Member Constant?
Thank you. So some years ago, under the previous director, the partners had some kind of personal responsibility requirements. And we have all kinds of opportunities to meet people's needs. One is low barrier for a shelter and kind of emergency response. One is permanent supportive housing. Something that tends to be missing within the mix is places where people actually have some duty to perform. Does partners maintain kind of that policy where individuals who are receiving services through them have to actually be personally responsible in some way? And if so, how does that look in your program?
So with this specific funding, as I said, there are no requirements, although we work with them to try to get them to be as responsible as possible, enroll in as much programming as possible. We use scattered site housing. So Partners itself does not own any housing or manage any housing. We have about 60 landlords that we work with, that we place these individuals at. And each of those landlords has their own requirements. We have a housing criteria. We utilize the best housers that we can find in the community. Unfortunately, there are a lot of not so good housers out there that are trying to house this population, and it's pretty bad out there. So that's a challenge too. But yes, we do try to work with them to accept as much responsibility as possible. But we've found with this population, most of them really need assistance, ongoing assistance.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, actually, Mr. Chair, I was on the queue.
Sorry. Member Rivera?
Thank you. And yeah, thanks so much, partners, for the work that you're doing. I just had a math question. So you started off with that you got funding from AHSC to provide 225 individuals with up to 15 months of assistance for housing. Then you broke it down to the current that you're serving, 181 individuals that Tenants is still actively discharged. So can you just explain to me a little bit of that delta between the 225 that you started with and the 181?
Sure. We've served 181 people since February of 2022 when this program started. So of those 181, we're still working with 94. 5 have completed the program and 82 have been discharged. Of those 82 that are discharged, any funding that they have left. So
actually, sorry. Let me refine my question.
Okay.
So 225 minus 181 is 44. So what is preventing you from utilizing those additional funds that you have just to provide services for those additional 44 individuals?
I understand.
What I'm asking. Thank you.
Thank you. So capacity. We have 3 full-time case managers working with the 94 individuals right now. As spots become available, as they get placed, spots open up and we add to their caseload. So that's how that works. This funding is through September of 2025. And so we have that amount of time. I mean, we want to house people as fast as possible, of course, but it takes quite a while to find people placement also.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So we are noticed till 11:30. So maybe motion to extend.
I'll move to extend. I do need to leave at 11:30, so it would be up to others though.
How about 11:45? There's about 6. Okay, 11:45, seeking unanimous consent. Okay. Next up is NeighborWorks Alaska. Welcome.
So Jim McKenzie, Executive Director of NeighborWorks Alaska, and we're here today to talk about this subject. We've got about 1,000 units across the community. We got 4 lines of business: affordable housing, supportive housing. This is Laura Cox, our director, who's going to be answering the questions directly. We also do homeownership and community engagement. So happy to be here.
Good morning, Chair. Laura Cox Wilson, NeighborWorks Alaska, Director of Supportive Housing. So we are currently receiving ERA 2 funds through the municipality and AHFC. Prior to that, we, much like Partners, had that first AHFC program where we served 452 individuals. We did well on that program, excuse me. And so we opted to apply for this ERA funding for up to 25 households. So that funding is for $302,500. We currently have 2 case managers who are working on that program, providing intensive case management. We signed our grant agreement April 14th, so it's a pretty brand new program. And so we have currently 11 households enrolled in that program and many applications that are coming through. One of the biggest barriers right now in that program is that there are no longer any non-congregate shelters that are operating. And that is one of our first eligibility criteria for that program. So we've reached out to HFC to ask if we can serve the other individuals who are in the other eligibility categories for that program, and we're just waiting for a response. Our supportive housing program currently administers 7 other programs, and we're currently serving a total of 652 individuals at this time. So those are various different programs like permanent supportive housing through HUD and the COC. We have a HUD home tenant-based rental assistance program that comes from HUD through the Anchorage Health Department and then to us. And then those 2 programs, we call them our change programs. That's the AHFC and the ERA funding programs. And then we do a ready to rent program. We also facilitate for the state of Alaska a Forest Park optional relocation program. And I think that's it. So, any questions?
Member Brawley?
Yeah, thank you. First, good to see you guys again. I was formerly on the board, so I'm happy to see that you guys are continuing to increase the supportive housing program. I just wondered, because I know there's a lot of questions from the community about the success of that program. And I guess I've heard that you guys have a very high success rate. So I just wondered, for folks who are in that program, can you describe kind of, proportion who remain housed or are able to move on to other housing? Thank you.
Yeah, Member Rowley through the chair. Specifically, across all of our programs, we currently have a 95% housing stability rate. The first change program specifically, we just hit our 12-month mark. And so the households that we are currently serving haven't quite left the program yet. So we don't have the data for that. And the same with this new change program as well. But across all programs, it's at 95%. And that basically shows us that 95% of the individuals who have left any of our programs have left so into a positive housing destination, so not back into any kind of homeless situation or being precariously housed.
So a lot of work going on with landlords, a lot of work going on with, so it's a two-pronged attack, working with the individual and the landlords, because we also have the other side of the house where we are a property manager. So it's a good combination because we appreciate what a landlord's looking for. And Assemblyman Cross, mentioned, some of the concerns and trepidations landlords might have. And so we totally feel that. And I think that's where our strength in this is that we come at this from both sides, from the landlord perspective and the case management perspective.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up, House of Transformation. Okay. And after that, choices. Okay. And then Covenant House.
Hi, I'm Allison again, sounding even better and better. I want to let you know the emergency rental assistance information. So the one thing I've heard a couple of people talk about is the success of housing is connecting it to support or services. That's primarily what we do with the fact that we have 262 unique young people that are supported by a permanency navigator that are supporting people in housing. We have people at guest house, we have people at multiple places. So it is true. The secret of it, the secret sauce is the relationship and the connection somebody has to services. So with our use of the money, which is about 6 months since it was deployed and to us, we have 73 young people housed in the community. With that connected to a navigator. So, and with that, we have a pretty high success rate with the fact that there have been 2 people, one moved out of state and one moved into another housing situation. Any questions while I still have a voice?
Looks like you get off easy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, actually.
Oh, sorry.
Felix.
Thanks.
Felix.
Go ahead, Member Rivera.
Thanks. Sorry for not letting you off easy.
No.
So I did have one just simple question. So as I understand it, folks who applied for the ERA 2 funds to AHFC, you gave like a projected, here's how many individuals we could serve with the funds. So do you have that? Is it, did you say I could serve 100 individuals with these funds, or do you have the projected number?
Felix, I don't have that with me, but I can get that to you guys and I'll send it out to you.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. And then last, I believe we have Catholic Social Services. Welcome.
There you go.
Hello, Senior Director for Homeless Family Services. For the ERA 2 funds, we just signed a agreement to house 46 individuals. Total amount was about $605,000. Client direct assistance is about $500,000. To date, I know we have enrolled about 10 of those households from May 2nd to today. The barriers that we are facing is a shortage of housing units available, and then also staffing, and I'm sure that's an ongoing thing. I'm not sure if there is anything else that you would like me to elaborate on.
Sorry, any barriers?
Challenges to utilizing the slots that we have received from AHFC to house the 46 households. So we've been working with United Way through the LHP to identify landlords that have units available. But even with that, some of the folks that we had as potential participants have already utilized these funds in the first round, so they're not eligible for the program.
Thank you. Okay, no questions. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I think that brings us to the end. So again, if you have, we'll follow up with those that didn't show up. If you have any thoughts or ideas, email Member Rivera, who I'd like to thank for putting this together. And then to circle back to the MOA abatement policy with the Department of Law, from the municipal attorney, a statement that they've completed a draft policy. It's currently being reviewed by the administration for adoption, and she will check later today to see where they are. And I don't know if anything to add from Mr. Gates. Oh.
You use the term adoption. What do you mean by that?
So I'm just reading straight from the email. So Member Felix, go ahead.
Yeah, so the chair said it. That was the word that Ms. Hauser used in her email. I'm not sure what she meant by that, but that's just reading verbatim.
So the question ultimately is, are they suggesting that it is an internal policy decision that they are making, or is it a proposal for the assembly? And I think that's probably a pretty important question to clarify.
And we can follow up on that. Thank you. So I believe that brings us to the end of our agenda. No committee legislative and budget priorities, nothing to discuss. Brings us to final audience participation. We have 2 people in the room.
Hi, thank you.
State your name and thank you.
Hello. Hi, my name is Harrison Smith. I'm a local resident. Yeah, I am an owner of a mobile home, and I heard some mention of mobile homes as affordable housing. I know that not everyone is a fan of mobile homes, but I own one, and I got this notice the other day that my rent is increasing from $600 to $700 and to $800 coming the first of next year, which, if you're familiar with mobile homes, you already own the house that you live in. You're paying just for the space of land that you're living on. Many people have financing that they're paying in order to pay off their mobile homes. Sometimes it's exorbitant interest rates because traditional financing will not pay for mobile homes. The reason that my landlord was able to do this is because in 2020, all the restrictions on raising rent in mobile home parks were repealed by the assembly. So there's no limit on how much they could raise the rent. They could raise it to $1,000. They could leave it so that most of the people have to move out, and without the resources to move their home, they would be leaving their mobile home behind, which they may have put tens of thousands of dollars into. So I'm just, my question is, what is a person in my situation expected to do? I know that I'm one of the lucky ones who has housing. I've put work into my home to make it safe and habitable, and this park is not an unpleasant place. Yeah, I mean, we're up against the fact that we're basically at the mercy of what the owner chooses to charge. It can't be easily moved because it would cost more than it's worth to bring it to the codes that are required to move it to a new mobile home park. Yeah, I mean, we're dealing with a situation where, this could happen any time of year. This can happen to renters in apartments as well. There's no restrictions on when rents can be changed and by how much. So, I didn't think that I would be the one facing housing insecurity here, but here I am.
Thank you. I have a question from Member Constant.
Do you know what piece of legislation did what you suggested it did? Because I have no memory of that.
Yeah, no, it was It was a combination or a sort of omnibus. Yeah, and I did pull it up. So it's Anchorage Ordinance 2020-96. It had to do with repealing any income tax, any property tax on mobile homes, but it also repealed any restrictions on raising the rent in mobile home parks.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any restrictions on any rental controls in this city, and so I'll be interested to review that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Welcome.
Good morning, Ronald Leva. Sorry about the time change. It was 11 till, I thought, 12:30. But I'm here again, and he's handing out a handout. And I think the most important thing is the location of a sanctioned camp and a transformation center. And I did a little report of my property at 3rd and Ingra, which wasn't purchased and is available. And I will vacate it. I'm forced to vacate it, possibly because I can't do business there with the navigation center and then the tents above me. I'm just blood in the water, and my insurance rates have gone sky high. But I'd like you to take a look that the most important thing is the 3rd Avenue Navigation Center, where you want to move up from the streets to a tent, to a pallet home, or the upster. Take a look at that. That's a converted dumpster. It's quick, it's clean, they're available, they're non-movable, they're can be sanitized and organized. But the location of any sanctioned camp should be close to the navigation center. And my location is perfect for that, not only as a temporary campsite, but as a transformation center for training. Whether you put in the tiny homes and build them there, Habitat for Humanity receiving building supplies, it's a great location. They're already there. There's 60 campsites at the old Native Hospital site. Plus, if you don't use that and wanted to go to a commercial campsite, it's right below the hill. You could buy vouchers. They have showers, laundry facilities, etc., and put the campers there. But the most important thing, I think, is the transfer from the street and continue on to a low barrier shelter that's there, the Brother Francis shelter, and then from there, hopefully, permanent housing. They put me out of business for the business I'm in, but since I can't beat you, now I got to join you and sell out to you. So my land's available. I will vacate it. I'm still trying to get the difference that was shorted me on the sale of the ML&P lots. And I did present. Felix came to my house. I gave him a tour. You're all welcome to come and take the tour and see how devastating being next to a homeless shelter can cause, the domino effect. And it's truly, Felix witnessed it. I invited over Dave Rittenberg. He saw it. More than happy having him there in my house, gave him the tour. He understands it. Tomorrow night, I'll have the Lutheran Church come. Is that my 3 minutes?
Yep, that was it. Thanks, Mr. Leva. Appreciate
Okay.
it.
I'd like to recommend get a clock, because then that, but I'm looking at you.
We'll get flags. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions? I must have said everything right, and if you all believe in what I said and are going to cut me a check, don't raise your hands.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Member Constant?
Yeah, just on the previous speaker, I'm looking at that ordinance, and we actually added what appears to be a rent control. It states it's AMC 12.10.045, disclosure of ownership data from mobile home courts monthly space rent increase limitation. Part B, mobile home courts subject to AMC Title 21 are prohibited from raising their monthly space rent by more than the average increase in the CPI for urban Alaska over the trailing 5 years. And that's new language. That was new language added to the code.
Real quick, can we extend for 5 minutes? Okay. Thank you. Move to extend. Approved. Thanks.
Thank you. And so I'm not sure what the facts are in your specific case, but we added a control. We didn't eliminate one.
No, if that's true, then that's good news.
Yeah. And and I don't know, before I don't think there was any, there's no section that reads that. And it just, that 5-year average, that I think that's a pretty fair approach. And I don't remember that, but it clearly happened. Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate that. Okay. Any other, anyone else for audience participation? Okay. Seeing and hearing none brings us to final discussion. Okay. No
Move to
discussion.
adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Thank you. We are adjourned.